So I'm really excited about this one. Specifically, we already kind of talked about how they're doing the Odyssey press tour and everything because that is coming out. I don't think it's out yet. I think it might be tomorrow,
Yeah,
but it's
tomorrow. Oh,
such
sorry,
a big,
Friday.
yes, such a big deal right now. So during all of this promotion for the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan actually came out with a very interesting take on AI and how he feels like they've never seen actually a more rapid dismissal of a foundational jump in technology. So there was a great quote from him, actually, because he makes so many good movies, but he was talking about how when he finished Interstellar, that they were seeing kind of a whole shift, everything AI, getting away from film, all of that. It was just like everyone just assumed there was not even going to be a market for it. And now it's been a complete flip. And like Kodak's film division is absolutely thriving because young filmmakers are embracing that tech, the original film technology versus shifting directly to AI. And it also comes from the fact that the audience, our Gen Z and others, are they have very strong feelings about AI and the use of it and when it is used in whether it's cinema or marketing, advertising, anything. They recognize it. It's the world that they grew up in. It's they lose trust in a brand, in the movie, in whoever or the creator when they're overusing AI. And they're connecting more in scenarios where AI isn't used as much. When I was reading about everything with the Odyssey and Christopher Nolan, it actually made me think also of another awesome great movie recently, Project Hail Mary, where they
Hmm.
didn't use as much AI as like I think everyone thought they were,
Yeah.
especially for the character Rocky, who was done almost exclusively by a puppeteer, which I read the books, so I was like, they better make Rocky good.
Right?
I will just fight for him so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. I
And
mean, the movie
so
would have been worse if
yes, if they
Rocky
would have
wasn't
used
as good as he
AI, I
was.
think it really would not have connected as
Hmm.
well. And so the fact that some of these movies are doing that is just showing how much that craft and art is still
Hmm.
really, really important and people connect with it. At the same point, as an adjunct professor, my class last semester was my honors class. So it's a person, a lot of really, really fantastic conversations. And of course, AI came up all the time.
Hmm.
And I find I found it really interesting from them because they use it all every day. They see it every day. That is just the world that they live in, these college students. But they can recognize it better than anyone. And their immediate reaction is typically a loss of trust in the brand. They feel like when you're using AI so much, you don't care. And I really just found that conversation very, very interesting. And then to see it kind of continue into other aspects like in film, which is not, the space I live
Hmm.
on a daily basis. So I really found that fascinating that we need to use it, we need to leverage it to be more efficient, but we don't want it to replace our creativity at all.
Yeah, I think Christopher Nolan has had, one of the best things to say about AI. Right now, he's the head of the Directors Guild. So that's something that's obviously clearly on their minds. And obviously, as like one of the best, directors of I guess it's not our generation, but of,
Mhm.
his generation, he, is actively seeing all these, potential changes happen. It's interesting because it's like obviously as high as he is like well paid and like well known. For him, it's like he could just say like, well, I don't use AI. Would never have to use it, because he's able to get, IMAX films for like an
Mhm.
entire what like almost 3 hour movie. Like that doesn't happen with just any
Yeah.
filmmaker. But I like that he's out there advocating for other directors, especially younger ones, and like
Mhm.
what they're interested in about the craft. And that's where he's in like a huge position of power to have these conversations and take them in the
Mhm.
direction that he wants them to go, which is clearly to be a focus around craft, story making, and really honing your art. So I really like that he's having these conversations and then also bringing them up, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times
Mhm.
you can just kind of get around it, right? Like we've had a couple of celebrities kind of flub how they're talking about AI by saying like, oh, it's necessary. We just have to
Mhm.
like embrace it and do it. Demi Moore, Reese Witherspoon are two glaring examples. And now you have someone who's like actually doing the work, saying that like one of the quotes that he said that like, stuck out to me was, "I've never seen a more rapid wholesale dismissal of a supposedly foundational jump in technology in my lifetime. Gen Z's judgment of AI swap has been immediate and harsh. They see it for what it is very quickly, and it's much easier for them to identify because they grew out of an online world they know well." And I think that like he's talking about like not just the dynamics of using AI, but then also your target audience, which is clearly like for him top of mind, right? Like he knows that he needs to make the best movie for like the biggest audience possible. And if you're using AI for that and they're already telling you like we can see, fake stuff, right? Like one of the moments that they keep bringing up is how Cyclops was like an actual,
Mhm.
I don't know if it was a puppet, but a what do they call that? A practical effect, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They could have used CGI, right?
Mhm.
But he, even like, I think it was like Matt Damon saying like, if it hadn't been a practical effect where like you see the Cyclops, in front of you and what you're
Mhm.
supposed to be acting, instead of having it be like a green screen that everybody's like staring at, you don't get the authenticness that you would as you do with like the practical effects. And I think that like the fact that he's still able to go out there and, have the film still look very real and very authentic says a lot
Mhm.
for like where we are in terms of craft versus AI. Another example I want to bring up because she's been talking about this recently was Olivia Wilde. She just came out with a new movie called The Invite, and one of the stories that came out during the press tour is that that the studio didn't want to pay for her to use a film. Usually it would have been done digitally, and she
Mhm.
insisted on it. So she paid for it herself. And then when they sold the movie for like a huge profit to A24, she got the money back. And I think that's like one of those things where directors have to stick to their guns and like know that what they're doing is going to look best for the audience and then go and like fight for it. Right. I've also been, I don't know if you saw, but Kane Parsons, who did Backrooms, also came out
Mhm.
very staunchly against AI. And that's like a, younger director who's saying like, what, like, why would anybody ever use that? Same as the director of Obsession,
Mhm.
Curry Barker, right? So it's like you really have these directors who are, coming out and being very forthright about what they think about AI, not just for themselves and like the craft, but then also putting it in the context of like audiences don't want that. What audiences
Yeah.
want are original stories, practical effects, which is what kind of you mentioned about
Mhm.
Project Hail Mary, right? Like we talked about it back then about how there were like two marketing campaigns happening at the same time. One is like
Mhm.
the celebrities, talking about the movie, but then you had this other, campaign happening kind of in the wings of like the director, the like director of photography, like the creators of like the practical
Mhm.
effects and like the set builders talking about what it was like to actually create the sets and build out the world. And I think we're at a place that like people are very interested in building out worlds. So the more real that you can make them, the more authentic it's going to come across and the more that your audience is going to like respect you and like that because you're building out the world and making
Mhm.
it more real for them. Yeah, that was kind of all over the place.
No, but I agree with that. I mean, it's basic marketing of just, like,
Yeah.
thinking of your audience and what they want and how they
Hmm.
how they wanna consume content or creativity or anything in that way, and it isn't a whole no AI, absolutely not, but
Right.
it's a lot better than, when every AI blew up, or was like, "It's gonna take everyone's jobs," and things,
Right.
but now we're understanding, like, the ideas and concepts of, like, when it makes sense, when it doesn't, why AI plus human is always better than just AI,
Hmm.
because I will not lie, I use it every day.
Hmm.
But you still need that human, you still need that creativity and the understanding and all that to go with it. And to kind of jump to your other point of the behind the scenes, which kind of talks a little bit about what we were talking about with like Jennifer Lawrence and the podcast episodes
Right.
giving that look. I agree. Like I probably watched all of the Project Hail Mary of the back of how
Hmm.
it felt. And I'm very much the same with Odyssey and like learning that like everything was done on these incredible locations.
Hmm.
And the fact that, like, they built huge sets and
Hmm.
huge props and things like that makes me
They built the horse.
excited to see the
They
movie.
built the boat.
Yeah, like,
One of the
I
stories also is how they have to like hike to these caves that have never been like
yes.
filmed before. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, this is legit. It's adding more to the story of
Mhm.
the Odyssey and adding to the narrative that like this is
Yeah.
the real deal. This is like real shit that you need to see in IMAX, right? I think that's another
Mhm.
thing that they've done really well of like, part of the marketing promotion has been like, go see it on the biggest screen that you can on
Mhm.
IMAX on 70 millimeter so that you can see all the details and see how real it looks. And I think
Yeah.
that worked really, really, really well for Project Hail Mary as well,
Mhm.
because part of it was like seeing like a movie create things that like you wouldn't ever really be able to see, especially in terms of space and how we think about it, right? Like, even when Artemis 2 was happening, right? It's like just the cameras aren't good enough to show you what
Mhm.
space looks
Yes.
like, right? So the fact that you have a movie showing you in a, huge screen, like what space looks like, both in a, real way, but then also in an aesthetic way. I mean, let's be honest, all the pink lights and stuff, like
Yeah.
how real is that? But the point is that like that came from someone's mind. They made it look
Mhm.
as real as possible through like the practical effects. And I do think that this is going to be a shift going forward and something that brands definitely need to look out for. Like this is both a warning and an opportunity that like
Mhm.
your audiences can tell the difference between AI and like real things more and more.
Yes.
So do you really want to give them a reason to spurn you or your brand because you're taking the easy way out of using AI, right? And that goes
Mhm.
both for like AI images, but then AI writing as well, right? Like you said, it's a human AI melding where
Mhm.
like the human is still like, the one that tells you, yes, this sounds real, or no, this sounds like AI. So definitely
Yes.
a thing for brands to
No.
look out for.
I definitely I agree, and I think that especially with so many streaming options now, the amount of
Mm,
options we have at home, it's getting harder and harder as we've known for a while to get people to the movie theater.
yeah.
And I
Mm,
think giving all of this behind the scenes information, letting us see the world that they build makes the viewer be like, "Hey, yeah, one day it's gonna come out on streaming, I could watch it at home, but the experience and things like that are gonna be so different if I go to the theater." And if they wouldn't have done all of that, I might have just waited for it to come out
mhm.
on streaming
Yeah.
because I got, my kitchen full of snacks and
Yeah.
the bathroom around the corner, I can pause it
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
going to the theater and getting a babysitter and all the things.
Yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah.
like, because I've seen so much of this world and I've seen so many interviews and it's just become fascinating, like, I'm like, I have to go
Mhm,
see the IMAX. Like, there's just not another option, and not to say that's just, like, an AI thing, but it is a marketing thing that has to shift with a lot of these movies if they wanna
mhm.
get people back into the theaters.
Yeah, definitely. Any lessons for you?
A big thing is whether it's Gen Z or and then I think it's going to expand in other generations, the skill and the skepticism that comes around being able to recognize AI, it's not just like a mood. Like they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, we don't like AI." It is a skill. It is something that we are becoming smarter and smarter at. It's becoming just like an innate like that's AI, even when sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
But we need to think about that. We need to take that into account in everything that we do as marketers and be like making sure it's never a copy paste. It's never just to generate and use it. It really is that we still have to use our skills, whether you're as marketer or creative or anything. Moving from just like when you do use AI, taking kind of a lens to it of like, not just does this look real, but is this good? Is this good quality? Maybe you do have to use AI for whether it be budget reasons or whatever, but you still go back to not just fast and get it done and get more content out there, but focusing on good quality content over the amount of content, which is a conversation we've had for quite a long time.
Mhm,
And I think there's a middle ground. Like I said, I use AI every day. I'm not going to pretend I don't. It has just made me so much more efficient,
mhm.
but, AI can only do so much. It is not perfect by any means. And I think we just need to find that balance and always, always, always still have a human in there to look at it, to judge it, to find the right thing, and not pretend that it's just gonna like replace everything. Because it's not. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One lesson for me is that this is showing it's a more glaring example of like the difference between going the cheap route of like
mhm,
using AI versus using, actual artists to create that
mhm,
craft and show, how things are really made. I think there's an opportunity here for marketers to also use how you're building things, how you're creating things as part of the marketing, right? Like
mhm,
that's been one of the most brilliant things about these movies that are using IMAX and 70 millimeter to show the craft behind how they made the movies. and have that be part of the marketing, right? Like that's its own like marketing angle now. So what are the ways that you as a brand can show how you're building things, how you're making things within your own company, right? And then another one is that like kind of piggybacking off what you said of Gen Z. One of the movies that came out this past week was Moana, and
Mhm.
there is very heavily CGI. And I recently saw that a lot of people were conflating CGI with AI. And I wonder if one of the
Mhm.
biggest reasons why that flopped is because it now is getting conflated with CGI and like AI. And so people are kind of seeing it as like, well, that's certainly a movie I can just watch at home because like why would I spend all that money? What you were
Mhm.
saying, right? When it just looks fake anyway and like the animated version is so much better. And so I think like that's one of the things that you need to think about, that if your work is close to AI or kind of
Mhm.
coming across as it, people, even if it's not, right? People
Yeah.
might turn away from it because they're like, well, this isn't worth it. This isn't like, if they're not willing to put in the time, why should I put in the time? So these are
Mhm.
things that, you as marketers have to decide, like, is this too close to that, that border? And are people going to think that it's AI? Because if it is, people will just like turn away, even if it's not. And I think, we're seeing a way that people are trying to handle that, which is saying like, if this is a photographer, this is the person who, did the work. And I think that is like a step forward, but I think it also shows that like, back to point one, that if there is a way that you are making these things, there should be a way for you to market that as well as a
Mhm.
way to show that
Yeah.
it's not AI and it's not fake.
No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I will see in comments on lots of posts on social media, people be like, AI, AI, this is
Uh-huh.
AI. And I'll be like, I don't think that's AI.
Yeah.
Like, I think, yeah, I mean, I think in Illustrator, I think they are using it, but there isn't, as much as we can spot AI, or,
Right.
there is still that the average consumer is not educated on, and as why would they be, on the difference between these different things and what things actually do require humans. So yeah, I think that's a great point, because yeah, I am sure we've all seen it in the comments of like,
Hmm.
this is AI generated. I'm like, no, that's just a graphic designer doing something super cool
Yeah.
that the majority of us have no idea how to do.
Yeah, I mean,
But
that came out
yeah.
during there was a couple of like football teams, right? That
Mhm.
like people are like, why are you using AI? And it's like, no, no, this is our in-house graphic
Yeah.
designer like created this. But it just kind of shows that like people are
Mhm.
now prepared to completely just like ignore you if
Mhm.
they think there's even a whiff of AI. So definitely something for people to keep an eye out for, because you
Mhm.
don't want to just get written off because of that.
That's a great point. I don't know exactly how we're gonna navigate it other
I
than,
know.
yeah, trying to give some behind the scenes, trying to give some education. And I mean, it'll definitely change as people get more familiar with AI and tools and stuff. But you can't assume that the average consumer would know that if
Mhm.
they've never worked in a space with a creative or graphic designers.
Yeah, definitely.